now have a large number of people, we can't quantify it at this point, that are in Atlantic City, and at this juncture there is no other way for us to go in and get them. They're going to have to ride out the storm there until at least 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. I cannot, in good conscience, send rescuers in as the storm is about to hit in the next hour, nor can I send them in the dark, given all the various hazards that would occur potentially to them. And so I asked these people to leave. For some reason, the mayor, in his initial conversations with the public, told them he didn't want his people leaving Atlantic City, so you have people staying.
And that was the governor less than an hour ago discussing the unfolding scene in Atlantic City. And you saw him take a direct shot at the sitting mayor of Atlantic City, who he said, gave ill-thought advice to his residents to stick around. Maybe later on people will question the forum for the back and forth of all this, whether this was the appropriate time to have division of elected officials, whatever. We'll get to that down the road. The governor also went on to say that he's been reaching out. If there's a silver lining, there is no silver lining, but if there's one thing at least that we don't have to worry about in this storm, Andrew, it has been coordination this is in Seaside, New Jersey. As you can see, the sea foam lapping up there as the waves, this is before even the surge gets there. This will get but the governor went into detail, and everybody else has said, from federal to state to county, and with, I guess, the exception of Atlantic City, to even in the municipal levels, there has been coordination. There is both National Guard, Air National Guard on scene already. They've got a bunch of trucks, power trucks that they've been rolling in from the Midwest here in advance of the storm as well. So there has been inter-office cooperation, and by all accounts here, everybody's been on the same page to deal with as soon as there's an aftermath of this.
I just want to get back to Atlanta. These are pictures out of Seaside Heights, New Jersey from earlier today. You see the water overturning or overtopping the boardwalk there. We're also getting pictures from Atlantic City of the boardwalk actually being destroyed in some places. Pieces of that Atlantic City boardwalk that Governor Christie was talking about floating through, and there it appears, and this is a live picture, I believe a live picture out of Atlantic City.
It's from a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Okay. And it's hard to see the boardwalk from this angle, but the water apparently reaching the boardwalk and overtopping it in places, and we're seeing pieces of the boardwalk absolutely floating through. Let's go to FiOS One's Jodi Goldberg. She is on the phone from us in Long Beach on Long Island, where she has had to seek shelter because of the severity of the storm there. Jodi, what's happening on Long Island?
Well, guys, the storm has finally picked up. We've been talking about when it's going to get here, and let me tell you, it couldn't be any more here. We were going live on the boardwalk, and before we knew it, the waves just came right past the boardwalk into the street. We had to move our cars. We were walking through it. There are surfboards, there are buoys, there are tables, and there is even a refrigerator. I mean, it's very bad. There's no one outside anymore if you don't need to be.
And Jodi, we saw the reports earlier today. John Heyman also came live from there. We saw a big storm surge early today, and we knew it was a matter of when. But you're saying that this thing really picked up in the last hour, and now basically large chunks of the city are underwater?
The city of Long Beach is close to being underwater. Cars along the street here. I'm inside the Alegria Hotel where it is safe. I can see from my room there are traffic lights swinging, and that lifeguard stand that went underwater last year, it's way up against the boardwalk. That is no longer where it was earlier today. And I'm not sure if you guys can hear, but there's an alarm going on. It's getting very bad here, and that's why if you don't have to go outside, you should absolutely not be outside. The water is, I say it's up to my hips, and we were just trekking through it. There were waves. I was walking through waves, so it's gotten very bad. And high tide is supposed to go out around 8 o'clock. The scary part is it's still only after 6:30, so we do have more time.
Jodi, we know that there have been some people who stayed in Long Beach, even in the portions that were under the evacuation zone. From where you are, have you seen a number of people? Are there people potentially in harm's way if these waters continue to rise?
If these waters continue to rise, there is no doubt that they will be in harm's way. As we were all walking back to the hotel, we saw them from their doorsteps. They were waving. You know, they are making light of it, except this isn't the situation to do that because it is very dangerous. And so they are no longer outside on the boardwalk. It is just, I mean, it's fierce outside. The ocean has just totally swept right past the boardwalk.
Have the first responders in Long Beach taken cover as you have as well? I'm just, if anybody winds up in trouble, I wonder if they're going to have any way of getting help if needed.
We were talking to the auxiliary police earlier. They were having trouble navigating up the street to get to the hotel. It's gotten very bad. And again, I mean, the surfboards, the buoys, everything from underneath the boardwalk has just totally rushed right into the street. There are no streets anymore. So I'm looking right out here in the parking lot, and it's like the ocean's right outside the door.
And all right, well, stay safe there, Jodi. And I'm sure we're going to be checking in throughout the night with you. We saw, Andrew, the swells that we saw in Long Beach early this morning. It just picked up with such a ferocity. Let's go next to Sam Liebman. She's joining us from Jersey City once again, where we can see, I could even make out behind you the winds here, and we'll be checking in, but I understand we're 50 plus mile per hour winds that you're contesting with. Do we have it right?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it's that and more. It is just, I mean, we're having trouble walking. I'm walking with my back against the wind, but we're going to take you up as far as we can to the water here because you can't even see the banks. I don't know if you can see that shot. I mean, I can walk right into the water here. The Hudson River has already breached its banks. It is right here. I'm stepping into it, and I don't know, can you see how deep I'm going in here? It's pretty, look at this.
What should be where you are right now?
10 feet away.
Normally, what's where you are right
I'm sorry,
now?
We're in Jersey City. You can see actually the Freedom Tower across the way, World Trade Center. So we're right across, probably from the Battery. So about Grant Street and Hudson Street here in Jersey City. And, you know, again, you have to remember this is not high tide yet. High tide hasn't even happened. So you can only imagine how much deeper this water is going to get. And the city has urged people mandatory evacuation in these low-lying areas since 7 this morning. Mayor Healy said there was a lot of room in the City 7 shelters, so a lot of people didn't take that precaution. However, the police have been going back and forth here, warning people on loudspeakers to get out of here, and you can see why it could be very dangerous coming up later. You can't even see the banks of the Hudson River. It looks like the ocean right now, right, Rich?
Oh my gosh! Like I think I just wanted to give people a frame of reference where you just were a couple feet ago. That's cement. I mean, we're not having lapping waves here anywhere near where you normally are. There was platforms. I believe the platforms, there was a good 6 feet or so from where the water level was supposed to reach before they got to the platforms. We saw that already capping it early this morning, and now it's just obliterated the platform. And as we can see, we're on to stairwells. Amazing, amazing. All right, well, do your best to try and stay out of harm's way there, Samantha. Thank you very much.
All right, let's try to get a reset of the entire region and the entire eastern seaboard. Obviously, we're focused on our areas of coverage. We want to go to ABC's TJ Winnick, who's putting together the sort of mile-high perspective for us, if you want to put it that way. Here's his latest report.
Hurricane Sandy has strengthened and picked up speed. It is now expected to make landfall early this evening near Atlantic City, New Jersey.
This is a serious storm, and it could potentially have fatal consequences if people haven't acted quickly.
A nearly 12-foot storm surge is possible in New York City, where a crane partially collapsed in Midtown Manhattan. Residents are bracing for more flooding and more power outages.
They're talking about surges that we have not seen before. So there is nothing at all to be taken lightly.
As Hurricane Sandy collides with an early winter storm from the west, snow is falling in West Virginia and North Carolina.
Expect to see a lot of wind. Power's probably going to go out because a bunch of trees will fall down. But other than that, it's just one of those things.
Fast going down.
90 miles off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, the Coast Guard staged a dramatic rescue for 14 crew members who had been on board a 3-masted ship. They are still searching for 2 passengers who had been on board the HMS Bounty when the storm passed by. Sandy has also shut down the federal government, the New York Stock Exchange, and mass transit from Boston to Washington, D.C. Amtrak has also been suspended, and 10,000 flights along the East Coast and beyond have been canceled. Authorities are telling residents stay indoors if at all possible.
This is not a time to be a show-off. This is not a time to be stupid. This is a time to try to save yourself and your family.
And that a scene setter, if you will, from today. Jeff, you know, the one thing everyone's talking is that the surge still hasn't hit. Aren't we? Initially, it was forecast the second surge, the one that was supposed to be happening, was around 8 o'clock. But didn't that clock get advanced quite a bit? And isn't it possible right now we're seeing the surge that people think are coming later on this evening? It just got moved up a couple hours?
Yeah, well, the timing of the storm moved in a little quicker. You know, we talked about it before we went on air. You know, we and I were saying it's about 2 hours quicker, so I would probably bump it up. Now, keep in mind, in some ways, it's a little bit in the way of good news. I mean, the timing of it, because the actual high tide is at 8, so if we're getting some of the stronger winds coming in right now, you know, it's a little bit in advance of the highest of high tides, but you still can see what's going on out there with some of the video that we're seeing right now, continuing to see some incredible waves moving in, and the storm surge is just tremendous, and coastal flooding is definitely an issue across the region. Wanted to point out, too, some of the strongest winds right now we're getting are out towards eastern Long Island, East Moriches. Right now, 81-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Groton, Connecticut, 76-mile-per-hour wind gusts in the last hour. These winds are really firing up, and we're starting to see stronger winds. And I just want to point out, you know, we talked about the crane in New York. Keep in mind, at the surface, we're getting certain winds. But as you go up in the atmosphere, those winds actually get a little stronger. So that crane that you saw in New York is getting stronger winds up at the top of the building than it is at the lower part of the building. And that's what you got to remember, you know, as we're talking about, you know, layers of winds that are incredibly strong. So as these winds continue to move off to the west, it's going to encounter some higher elevations in the northwestern portions of New Jersey, and that's going to enhance those wind gusts for even inland areas as we head into the nighttime hours. I want to point out a couple things. You know, Rich and Andrew were talking about how big the storm is. This rainfall is now making it into portions of Canada while we're getting snow in the portions of West Virginia. Blizzard warnings, 1 to 2 feet of snow here. Heavy rain in Virginia, in the Delmarva area, just pummeled with rain. And then there's the windy section with the light rain. And then you're starting to see that rain move all the way up into Canada. I mean, you're talking about a situation and a storm that is impacting so many people on so many different levels. Whether you get the heavy rain, whether you get the coastal flooding, whether you get the strong winds, it really doesn't matter. Everybody getting a little taste. Think of it like a boxing match, too. You know, we've been getting the jabs in the stomach from Sandy all day long. Now we're trying to get the knockout punch. And that's what we're seeing here during the evening hours, is Sandy trying to deliver that last fatal blow there to get us all knocked out from the storm. And, you know, it's one of those things where we just want to just stay tough at this point, because you don't want to let your guard down. You know, you've taken the necessary preparations. We just got to get through the next couple of hours with the strong winds, the light to moderate rainfall. And once we get through that, you know, we start to see things start to slowly improve by tomorrow. But still, we'll be dealing with strong winds, but at least we won't be seeing the surge that we're seeing right now across the region.
So again, to sum up, Jeff, for folks, the worst we're about to get. There will be another high tide in the morning that'll be accompanied by some of the strong winds and rainfall that's still part of this. So once people get through the morning hours, they'll still have to deal with rainfall and some of the leftover winds, but the worst is going to be tonight, and there'll be some carryover tomorrow when we have to deal with one more surge. But once we get through late morning, then we're going to be dealing with recovery and basically rescue, right?
I think by about the noontime hour tomorrow, we all can, you know, breathe that deep sigh of relief and just, okay, we did it. You know, I think that's when you start to feel like you get to that point, is the noontime hour. The morning, some areas are still going to be pretty windy, but by the noontime hour, I think we'll start to see things really ease up a bit.
Thank you very much, and we'll be checking back with you in a little bit, Jeff. Thanks. Let's get some perspective here on really the state of affairs at the ground level with Stephen Kuhr, who joins us. He's with the New York State OEM. Stephen, by now our audience well acquainted with what's going on the ground. Talk about it from the perspective of OEM. Is this what you guys had forecasted? In some ways, is it even worse?
It's actually about what the Weather Service had forecast. You know, it's tragically unfortunate for us that the Weather Service got this one right. They have been forecasting a near catastrophic storm for 5 or 6 days now, and we've been working with them closely to put preparedness plans in place with our federal, state, and local partners.
If I can, I'm going to start in southern New York and make my way north. And let's start in Manhattan. We're already seeing some of the low-lying areas, part of those that were in the evacuation zone A areas, mandatory evacs. Talk about the water already on the ground and the concerns about flooding into the subways, et cetera. And is there going to be potentially a shutoff of power in advance of that?
Well, I'm not aware of any power that's already being shut off in advance, nor are we aware of any flooding that's actually occurring in the subway system at the moment, although we're certainly prepared for that. We've been working with MTA to build capacity for sandbagging of certain subway stations in lower Manhattan. You know, guys, what they're saying is the storm a year ago, Irene and Lee, was forecasted at 4.5 feet storm surge. Today we're looking at 11 plus. And in some of the North Shore parts of Long Island, actually close to Westchester, we're looking at surges that could peak out at 17 or 18 feet. So we're certainly not ready to let our guard down in any sense of the word.
And Stephen, if you can, if we can talk about the lower Westchester and the Hudson Valley, we've seen scenes played out in Mamaroneck and other places where huge flooding, and I think people don't realize this, going all the way up the Hudson River into the Poughkeepsie areas and points north, they're dealing with major flooding as well, right?
We're actually looking at, and I believe this is unprecedented, we were originally looking at a flood warning for the Hudson River up to Poughkeepsie. That is now extended to Kingston, New York. So we might get tidal flooding along the Hudson River system, but fortunately we're looking at what now appears to be some reduction in rainfall. So we're comfortable that our riverine and lake system could accommodate the water in the Hudson Valley and the Catskills and up to the north and western part of the state.
Would you get a surge going up the Hudson River as the storm makes landfall? We're used to thinking about it in places like Long Island or on the water's edge, but would you see that surge then extend through the rivers and upstream?
That can actually happen, especially because we're looking at a potential high tide situation with landfall. Which, by the way, I've just been told by our meteorologist that the storm is actually currently making landfall in central New Jersey.
And we're going to be going to Jersey in a minute. But Stephen, if I could stay with you, we already are hearing reports that we have nuclear power facilities, obviously in New York State, Indian Point being the most notable. There's others, obviously, in New Jersey, Connecticut, and points north. There's concerns with the flooding level about the safety and security of these plants. What can you tell us about that?
Well, we have a very close relationship with all the nuclear power plants in New York State because we run the preparedness program surrounding the plants. So the only one along our concern path would be Indian Point. We've had a number of conversations with the plant, and there's a margin of comfort there that the plant is not in any risk right now. That far north, we don't believe that the flooding would be anywhere above their capacity to handle it.
Okay, and finally, Stephen, we're going to be giving folks, again, all the trouble numbers for the power companies, estimates. They're all over the place as to how many people are out of power, but easily into the hundreds of thousands, probably going to exceed 1 million when it's all said and done. Is the estimation that we've been talking to officials of 7 to 10 days before power is restored to a lot of folks here, you think that's a fair benchmark?
Well, you know, we use 7 to 10 days now. You know, the old model was to prepare for 2 to 3 days, 72 hours for self-preparedness. I'm wondering if that 7 to 10 day model is coming from our message about having the public self-prepare for this. But we've been working with the Public Service Commission, and all the utilities in the state. In fact, here in the State Emergency Operations Center, we have representatives from all the major utilities, including Con Edison, that are coordinating with us. And while I believe we're going to have a protracted wind event in and north of New York City, which can cause, I think that's the issue, it's the protracted wind event.
Right.
So I think we're going to have power outages. We need to prepare for that, and we could see power out for quite a while. I would prepare for 7 to 10 days. I mean, I believe that's certainly a worst case scenario, but it's certainly worth planning for.
Stephen Kuhr from the state OEM. I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you very much. And Andrew,
I just want to jump in with a couple of quick
please.
updates. Getting word from multiple sources of a building collapse in Manhattan, in Chelsea, at 8th Avenue, 8th and 14th Street. From the sources I'm seeing, nobody inside, but officials are responding. Also getting word of up to 500,000 power outages already on Long Island, which is about the level that they got to from Hurricane Irene last year. Hundreds of thousands. That's the latest numbers we have from LIPA officially. We'll see if that goes up as the
and those
as
numbers
the
on the
evening
very
goes on.
conservative side, and you can figure why, because obviously a lot of people lose power.
And don't have the ability to report it, and it's not necessarily the power companies may not know. Also, Connecticut, we saw big problems with their. Oh, look at that! We saw
in Fairfield County, and this the scene playing out in Atlantic City earlier today. But in Fairfield County and Stanford and in some of the shore cities there, there's been literally shutdowns of major byways and arteries to get around.
And let's keep in
water
mind,
problems.
those outages in Connecticut lasted up to 2 weeks last year. On Long Island, you were looking at 5 to 7 and plus days in some places. This could take a long time for us to get the power
Andrew,
back
just
on.
if you could, speaking of power, on what we spoke to Stephen about in terms of the power plants and the concern about the safety, the feds have already dispatched folks, right?
Yeah, there are 11 nuclear power plants that are in the zone where the storm is going to hit, from Oyster Creek in Salem in New Jersey to Indian Point, as you mentioned, Calvert Cliffs in Maryland, even 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania. The NRC has inspectors on the ground at those locations. They say that they've all been tested for levels of safety for rising waters, akin to what we are expecting from the storm today. They're monitoring everything, but it's, we're hoping for the best, as hoping that those avoid any potential problems.
You mentioned, by the way, the story that's coming forward about a building down in Chelsea. Let's go to Manhattan. Our Kim Lengel is there in Midtown, and as she reported earlier this hour, that crane that was hanging so precariously. Kim, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Rich. Actually, we're driving from Midtown down to Lower Manhattan via 5th Avenue here, and just to give you a sense of how desolate New York is at this moment. I mean, you almost never see empty streets like this, and it's quite a predicament right now, actually, because Mayor Bloomberg had expressed that he would have liked to see more people evacuate the city, and that the shelters perhaps aren't as full as they could be. Now, traditionally, when we see storms like this, we know that people don't always go to the shelters this early on, and seeing as though Irene was sort of a teaser, meaning that people evacuated and it didn't end up being that bad of a storm after all, many people stayed in the city. So we're actually wondering, where the people are at this point. Perhaps they're in their apartments, in their buildings, because as we're seeing the streets of New York City, subways are closed down, stock exchange is closed, we know school is closed for tomorrow. There's really not much you can do in New York City. There's not much you can do, there's not much you can buy, and we're really not seeing any people, virtually almost no cars on the road in this stretch of 5th Avenue. Rich, back to you.
And I know you're making your way downtown. That report that Andrew just brought with us about a building collapse in Chelsea, maybe we can get an account of that as the night moves on.
I just want to add, I mean, we see how desolate the roads are in Manhattan as Kim is driving. In Philadelphia, they're closing down all the interstates in and out of the city. The city of Baltimore, nobody's going to be allowed on the roads after 6 p.m. Actually, so that's about an hour ago. A ban on all vehicular traffic on city streets. It's unbelievable the extent of the precautions that people are taking.
And part of the problems that people had was anyone that was trying to get into Manhattan, for example, today, they shut down public transportation, no rail system, and moreover, you started to see the FDR shut down in places. You saw the Hut shut down in certain places, east and west. You weren't getting out. You had major places that were shut down, and it's really a surreal scene as you see Kim making her way down what looks to be a vacant Gotham here, and it's really something to see. And obviously, you had that situation, Kim, where you just were on 57th Street with that crane. As I said, hanging really precariously over. I know they cleared out about 3 city blocks because of, possibly some of the consequences if that thing fell. Right now, there's very little they can do about it except for just hope, right?
Yeah, Rich, it's a really, the word is precarious situation, and the word that authorities have used is dangling, which doesn't give people much faith if you're stuck underneath that crane or anywhere in the vicinity, especially with these high winds, 60 miles an hour. All the reporters, as we were standing there today, you know, you'd get a high wind and you'd hear the scaffolding jingle, and you're just, you know, wondering what is going to happen with this crane. Now, we are hearing reports that they're unconfirmed at this point, but we are hearing reports that there were complaints about construction coming from that area. We know that the Office of Emergency Management set forth guidelines prior to the storm telling all builders that their cranes had to be secure. Now, exactly what secure means, we don't know, and we don't know at this point if that builder in particular followed those guidelines. So we'll have to, you know, find out in the weeks and months to come.
Well, we'll check in with you in a little bit here as you make your way downtown there, Kim. Thank you. And let's get another quick check on the weather, Andrew. Let's go to Jeff Denoyers for that. Jeff, we understand that Sandy's made landfall in New Jersey.
Yeah, actually, it clipped extreme southern New Jersey just moments ago. And I want to point out, too, you know, as it's moved closer, the winds have really picked up across the region. In fact, this is just the last hour. Look at some of these wind gusts. That is 94 miles per hour in Eaton's Neck. And that is some very intense wind. Bridgeport, Connecticut, 76, Plum Island, 85. Islip had a report of 82-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and in East Norwich is 81 miles per hour, and the winds have really picked up. This is sustained winds right here. 51 in Uniondale, 45 in Port Jeff, 45 in Glen Cove, and mainly in the 30s in New Jersey right now. But the winds gusting now. This is where we're starting to see some really peak winds. And we turned our attention from storm surge earlier to now a combination of wind and storm surge as we head into the evening. Because look at these winds, 82 in Islip, 71 in Uniondale, near 60 in Newark and Caldwell. This is really serious when these winds start to pick up like this, up in Bridgeport, 63, because the ground is already saturated from the rainfall that we've had, and the trees are very vulnerable right now to being uprooted. That leads to more power outages, and it's just going to be a domino effect for the next couple of hours across the region.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. All right, Andrew, let's kind of lay out here what to expect for the balance of both tonight and into tomorrow. As Jeff said, we're starting to see landfall here, Sandy. The surge that's beginning will only get more intense, at least for the next little bit here. And then we have one more surge to deal with, to contend with the morning, all with winds here in excess of 50+ miles an hour, some cases in excess of 90 miles an hour.
And it's really starting to hit New York City for the first time. So we're really starting to feel the impact in the largest city in the country. It's the time basically to, you know, gather around, hope, pray, and wait for the best.
All right, thank you. Andrew's going to continue our coverage. I'll be back here 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. Wendy Gillette's going to join Andrew on set. We'll see you. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this quick break.